Well, here I am, and welcome back to the Little Tiny Homestead. Today, I'm going to be making some potato leek soup. But before I get to that, if you can indulge me, I want to talk about aprons. Not many people seem to wear aprons these days to cook, although you do see them wearing them on the Great British Baking Show. But aprons used to be a thing that a woman would not go into her kitchen, and I say woman because most of the time the women were the ones cooking, without wearing an apron. So this one I have on today is my friend got me. It has chickens on it. It's pretty cool. And I have a few others here I'd like to share with you. And I'm sure many of you probably know a lot more about the history of aprons than I do, different types of aprons, but I'm going to show you what I have. So this one is one from Croatia. My son got this when he went to Croatia for a mission trip. And of course, what would it be without a Christmas apron? My husband won a contest with the family for the Great British Baking Show, so he was given this great Star Baker apron. A friend of mine got this when she was in California. And the next couple, besides this one is just one before I had any aprons at all, I just found this craft. There's a muslin apron. Now, these last two are antique aprons, and it's beautiful because if you look at the stitching on them, it's just so lovely. Somebody took time to do some needlework on them. There's that one, and there's this one. So pretty, and I actually don't wear these. In fact, I haven't worn aprons a lot, so I might start doing that. It makes sense if you don't want to get your clothes dirty. So just a little side there about aprons. And so we are going to get started here making potato leek soup. So before we get started putting the whole soup together, just a couple of little things I want to talk about. The potatoes I'm going to use are not the ones that we grew this year, and they're just regular baking potatoes, probably russet, something you can get in the store. They need to be peeled, and then we're going to be cutting them into about dime-sized pieces. The leeks are the ones that I just harvested in the last video, and these are the ones we grew. One thing about leeks that you have to remember, we're going to be cutting them into slices here, but they do tend to hold on to the dirt. I've talked about this before because they have layers and layers in there. You can see, don't know if you can see that, but you need to kind of keep an eye on that. If it looks like it's dirty, you have to rinse it out. So I just cut off the root end, and then I'm going to slice these into pieces. And we're going to be using store-bought chicken broth. I would love to use my own homemade broth. I was talking to my husband actually about this. But if you want to have your own chicken broth made from scratch, you would have to cook a chicken, and then you get only about 2, maybe 3 cups of broth from that. And so you'd have your chicken, and then you'd have your broth, and then this recipe itself takes 6 cups of broth. So for the sake of just efficiency, I'm going to be using store-bought chicken broth. Okay, so I have cut up my leeks and my potatoes, and in here you can see that they are cut in, I would say, between penny and nickel size pieces. And I'm just going to let you know that in cooking, there's no real hard and fast rule about amounts. Often you can just kind of do it to taste, whereas in baking, you do want to follow the amounts and the types of things that you use because it can really affect the bake. But in cooking, it's a little bit more flexible. So I'm going to be honest with you. I am doing things a little bit different than the recipe says. As a matter of fact, when I take my olive oil, which I'm going to do shortly, and put 3 tablespoons into the stock pot, I'm not going to necessarily measure 3 tablespoons. because I'll kind of guess. And after experience, you kind of figure what's the right amount. And by the way, I am using my stock pot because I was going to use my Dutch oven, and I do not think it's big enough for this recipe. As well, I was going to use my cast iron Dutch oven, and I don't think that's as big enough either. So I'm going to go ahead and use my stock pot. Here's the olive oil. I just use a brand from Aldi. It's olive oil. It looks just the same as any other. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of guess 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of olive oil in there. In addition to that, I'll be putting in 3 tablespoons of butter. Now, this recipe calls for unsalted butter. I prefer to use salted. It does call for some more salt later on in the recipe, but to me, it's not going to make it too salty. I don't mind salt. Some people don't like so much. However, if you don't put enough, it really changes the taste. Okay, so my butter is melting. Now, this recipe also calls for celery. I like celery. My husband does not. He's going to be eating this, so I'm just omitting that. So because I'm omitting the celery, I'm actually adding a few more leeks than it calls for. So we'll let this butter get melted, and then we're going to pour in potatoes and the leeks. Okay, in go the leeks, because the butter is just about melted. In go the leeks and the potatoes. My leeks and potatoes are cooking. We're going to let these cook up until the leeks are tender, just about 8 minutes or so. And really that's just an estimate. I usually test them either by squishing them or tasting them. And by the way, my son made this wooden spoon. Pretty cool, huh? So we'll let these cook. You could put the lid on, but I am choosing not to do that and just kind of stand by and cook it up for the next few minutes. And once these are cooked, I'm going to take some garlic. I use my garlic press. 2 cloves is what it calls for. Some people will actually smash their garlic with a knife, chop it up with a knife. Garlic press just seems really easy to me. So we'll be sticking the garlic in after about a few minutes here. And basically, we're going to let that go until it is fragrant. So when you're smelling that garlic, that's when you move to the next step. Also, to let you know, I started this on high to get the butter melted. I do have it now turned down to medium low. Looks like my potatoes and leeks are just about done. I do have a little bit of sticking, but no worries about that. It's not burnt. It's just a little bit brown on the bottom. That's not a big deal. I'm actually going to take a leek out here and just check on the hot. See if it's tender. I'm going to let it go a little bit longer. It's not quite ready. Okay, here's my garlic press. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze my garlic into the mixture here. Oops, a little bit of paper, garlic paper. Anyway, squeeze it in there. I did end up putting some more olive oil in as well because it was sticking quite a bit. So we'll let this get fragrant. And then we'll move to the next step. It does take 6 cups of broth. Each carton that I have of the broth is 4 cups. I don't measure it. I just estimate 1 full carton and a half of another one. The other nice thing about an apron, you can wipe your hands on it. When you make a mess, just wipe your hands on your apron. It's great. Okay, so now I'm going to be adding my broth. So I'll be doing this whole container here of broth. And then we'll do a half of the next one. Also, it calls for 6 fresh sprigs of thyme. And I don't have fresh thyme. I don't know. I don't buy it in the store. If I have it like when I'm in the summer, when it's fresh outside, I don't have it here in the house fresh. But I know my kids find it and it's good, but I never think it looks very good in my store. So you can use as a substitute for 6 fresh sprigs of thyme, you can use 3/4 of a teaspoon of dried thyme, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do a half of this. To get more of it in there, no big deal. It's about half of that one. And now I'm also going to put in a 3/4 teaspoon of fresh ground pepper. I took my pepper mill and went ahead and ground that up. So about, I'm going to measure this one out, just so we have the right amount. It looks about like 3/4 teaspoon of pepper and a teaspoon and a half of salt. And like I said, I did use a salted butter. I really am certain this is not going to be too salty. 3/4 teaspoon now of thyme. And so it's about 3/4 teaspoon. We're going to let this simmer now for about 20 minutes. And we have it on probably low. Keep it on low there. And everything will get kind of mingled in there, and it'll be, all the flavors will come together. So we'll let that go for a little bit and see you in a bit. So I think I mentioned to you that there was some browning on the bottom of the pot as I was cooking the potatoes and leeks. And honestly, I don't mind that taste. It's not burnt, it's just brown, and it gives a whole other layer of flavor, I think. So if that happens to you, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and go with it. It actually tastes really good. And once you get the other ingredients in, the broth, etc., you can't really tell it even happened. So have fun with it. Enjoy. There is one more thing in the recipe that I didn't follow, and that was that because I use dried thyme, not sprigs, generally before you puree part of this mixture, you would take the sprigs out. Since I did not use the sprigs, I used the dried thyme. It's just going to be pureed up together. It's not going to be an issue. So one of the advantages of not using the sprigs, I guess. Okay, so it is done simmering. I have put 4 cups of the mixture, soup mixture, into my blender. I'm going to blend this up. This just creates a puree, some different textures in the soup as opposed to just a chunky part. So we'll have some of this pureed, and then we'll mix it back together, add the cream, and we're good to go. Okay, got my puree mixture. I'm going to pour it into the rest of the mixture. I'm going to add the cream, and then we'll let it go for a few more minutes, maybe 10 more minutes, just to make sure it's heated through, because the cream, of course, is cold. So pouring this in. Ooh, kind of messy. Ooh, it's hot. Scoop that out a little bit. Ooh, it's kind of like mashed potatoes in a way. I guess it kind of is, really, when you think of it. Okay, let's get a cup of cream. And this is just heavy whipping cream. It's supposed to be heavy cream. Heavy whipping cream will work just fine. And we'll stir that up. Let that go on kind of low for about 10 minutes or so. And there you have it. Potato leek soup and maybe some fresh homemade bread. Great for a winter's day. And until I see you next time, stay rooted. Bye-bye.